Namaskar, I'm Devdeep Purkayastha from the Indian Institute of Technology, Bombay. Welcome to my course, Business Fundamentals for Entrepreneurs. This is Module 20 about social business development. But before I get into the module itself, just to remind you of the flow of the course and the modules for weeks 9 to 12. In this module, we will cover, as always, 6 topics. We'll start with what is a social business, different types of social business models. We'll then get into the objectives of social business model, which is around United Nations Sustainability Development Goals, which is UN SDGs. We'll then look at how India as a country is progressing versus those goals. We'll then look at legal structures for social businesses. And then we'll get into what is called corporate social responsibility, CSR, which is a legal requirement and a great initiative in India. So what is a social business? A social business is focused on a social mission. And the mission can be to improve people's lives and livelihoods. It could be to improve the planet. It could be any of many social improvement initiatives. The difference with a normal business and a social business is a normal business typically focuses on maximizing returns for the owners and the shareholders of the business. But social businesses will focus primarily on the mission, the social mission. And as we'll see, even if a social business makes profits, it's not taken out and given back to the owners and shareholders. It is put back into the social business to grow the impact on society, on people, on planet. So social business has a broader objective than profit maximization for shareholders and owners. So let's deep dive into the 3 kinds of businesses. The first is, as I said, for-profit business. And then we have a version of social business which is not for profit. And then you have a true social business. So let's look at these 3 different kinds of businesses. So you can read the chart on the screen. But a for-profit business, as I said earlier, maximizes profits for the shareholders or the owners. Non-profit business address a social cause, as does the social business, but there's one big difference. The big difference is that a social business generates its own revenues through sales of services or products. It generates its profits, but it uses the profits from the business to continue its mission. Unlike that, a not-for-profit business usually will depend on donations or grants and do social work. It may not generate any business revenues or profits from the social service that it is doing. So not-for-profit works on social causes, but is dependent on grants, donations, may not generate any revenues or profits. But a social business is like any other business, with one big difference, as I said. And of course, a for-profit business is selling products and services to generate profits. As I said, the profit distribution is that for-profit businesses give the profits back to the owners. Not-for-profit may not even generate any profits, but a social business generates profits and uses it for its mission. Finally, the legal structures can be different for a for-profit business, a not-for-profit business, and a social business. And we'll, in a later section, deep dive into different business structures, legal structures. These legal structures may vary by country. So the legal structure permissible in US may be slightly different than in India or Europe or Japan or any other country. But in essence, they're more or less the same. But we'll get into the legal structures in a while. With that background, please reflect for 3 minutes. Think of a not-for-profit or a social business and think about what is the mission and what are the work that they do. I will give some examples in a while, but try to look around you and try to identify social businesses or even not-for-profit businesses and write down in a course journal what is the mission and what activities they do. Reflect for 3 minutes. I talked about social businesses, not-for-profit, having goals. So what are the usual goals? So in 2015, a lot of the countries and appointed United Nations body defined the goals, the 15-year goals, which would be ending and targeting 2030, on how to improve people's lives and livelihoods, how to improve the planet itself, how to ensure peace and justice, and how to create partnerships around the world to deliver the social missions. There are 17 such goals. We'll look at them in detail in a while. And these goals are collectively called United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, or UN SDGs. These goals, as we'll see later on, are all interconnected. So there may be social businesses which don't target only one goal, but as it focuses on one goal, it also interconnects with other development impact. So goals are all interconnected. So let's have a look at these goals. As I said, there are 17 such goals. You can see them on the screen, and we'll break them out in a while into different buckets. And I encourage all of you to go on the internet and look up the details of UN SDGs in the website of the Office of the UN SDGs. And there are many other websites which give you the details. These 17 goals, as you can read, cover things like no poverty, because a lot of the people in the world today, unfortunately, are underprivileged. Not only are they not rich, but they're poor. And therefore, they suffer from many bad impact of poverty, like hunger. So the next goal is around zero hunger. And then you'll go down. And I encourage each of you to read the 17 goals and be familiar with those 17 goals, such as good health, education, jobs, as well as goals related to the planet, and peace and prosperity. Even as I speak, there are 2 horrific wars going on in the world, in the Middle East and in Ukraine. But the planet and the people cannot prosper when there is war. There has to be peace. And therefore, one of the biggest goals, most relevant goals today is not just poverty and prosperity and well-being, but also peace. No wars. So these are the 17 SDGs. Underlying these goals are targets. So there are about 170 targets, which break down the goals into more actionable points. I will not put them up in this course, but I strongly recommend that you do a search and familiarize yourself with the SDGs and the underlying targets. So now let's look at the buckets. In those 17 SDGs, SDGs 1 to 7 are about people. Better lives, better livelihoods, better health, better education, and basic access to necessities like water, clean air, etc. Because of the 7 or 8 billion people in the world today, many billions, maybe 5 or 6 billions, are underprivileged, especially in what is called the Global South, in Africa, many parts of Asia, Latin America, etc. So, as the world moves on as humanity moves on, not a single person should be left behind. And the goals of 1 to 7 SDG is to make sure, or at least try to make sure, that nobody of the population of 7.5 to 8 billion in the world today is left behind. They will all get access to the basic of human life. So these are the people goals. The next bucket related to people goals is prosperity. For people to have jobs, to reduce the inequality between the richest and the poorest. You cannot have a few very rich people and many, many very poor people. The inequalities hopefully should reduce over time. And then things like sustainable consumption, because consumption has a cost on the planet. Using electricity or raw material, or precious earth, etc. So you can read the SDGs 8 to 12, which are around prosperity and which goes hand in hand with the people SDGs. And as you'll read and understand and reflect on the SDGs, you will find that the SDGs are interconnected. So a social business may be doing a project to create livelihoods. But then as the social business creates livelihoods for 100 people, 1,000 people, or 100,000 people, they're not only working on the jobs, but they're also working on the basics of no poverty, zero hunger, well-being, education, etc. So they're all interconnected. The next bucket is about the planet. Because as the population has increased in the planet today, as consumption has gone up, the planet is struggling. There's global warming, so the temperatures are going up. As the global warming happens, temperature goes up, ice melts. As ice melts, there's flooding, the water level rises, the unseasonal rains, etc. As more and more goods are produced in factories around the world, these factories pollute, emit noxious gases, and they impact the air quality. So even in India, we have a big problem on air quality. The big cities, especially Delhi, Lucknow, Kanpur, Mumbai, all struggle with poor air quality. So getting into a situation where the water is polluted, the air is not clean, and this impacts not only human beings but also marine life. As there's deforestation, because more and more wood are being used, jungle life is being impacted and the planet is struggling. So the three SDGs, 13, 14, 15, relate to planet and protecting the planet. Moving on, SDG number 16 is particularly relevant today as I speak because of the wars. The sheer misery and destruction that's happening because of the wars that are going on in different parts of the world. And hopefully the wars will stop and peace will prevail. It's also all about justice. That countries, communities, citizens are not penalized or punished inappropriately or disproportionately. There should be law, but there should also be justice. People must get access to justice. The strong should not exploit the weak. The strong countries should not exploit the weaker countries. The strong communities should not exploit the weaker communities. And therefore, SDG 16 is about peace and justice. The last SDG is about partnership. The UN SDGs will not work if everybody doesn't pitch in, because things like, let's say, clean air needs everybody to pitch in. Clean energy, reducing of bad gases, bad emission. It will not help if some countries are complying or following the goals, but some countries are not, because the bad air spreads. The bad water flows. The bad emission moves over. And therefore, you need everybody to pitch in. And therefore, there has to be partnerships around the world. So, UN SDG 17 is about creating partnerships around the world. So, this summarizes at a high level the 17 United Nations Sustainability Development Goals. Moving on, if those are the UN SDGs, we should all look at how India is progressing versus those SDGs. And the government of India actually drives and tracks, monitors, and help meet the SDG goals. And it starts right at the top and flows down through the government, central level, state level, right down to district and local level. And you can visit this site and then look at the details of how India is progressing. I've just captured a couple of highlights. This is a dashboard which shows how India is progressing across the different SDGs. So you can see for yourself which are the greens, which means India is progressing sufficiently, and as per our commitment, which are the yellows, where you are not progressing as well, and which is the red, there's one red you can see there, where we're completely off track. And this is all transparent and available in the government website, in the Niti Aayog site. And then, if you look at state-wise progress, the earlier chart was about SDG-wise progress. Government of India also publishes state-wise progress. And you'll see that most of the states are progressing as per commitment, as per goal, but there may be one or two which are slightly off track. And you can see that for yourself. Now reflect again for 3 minutes. Think of a non-profit, an NGO, or a social business, and think about which of the United Nations SDGs are they fulfilling, and are they supporting one United Nations SDG, such as no poverty, or two, such as no poverty and zero hunger, or three, which is provide jobs and therefore reduce hunger and poverty. Reflect for 3 minutes and take the notes on your course journal.